Sometimes founders can think of it as giving up or quitting, when really it isn't.
I guess I thought that an exit strategy would be something you figured out when the time came. Now I realize that it's something that you need to work toward every day.
Getting into an understanding that you rent your business, you don't own your business.
Once you realize the value of preparation, you're gonna go all in. It's either you're super emotional and not prepared, or you're doing everything you can to be prepared. Welcome to episode 5 of the Legacy Advisors podcast, where we break down what it really takes to build, scale, and exit like a pro. I'm Chris Jones, here with my co-host,
Ed Button.
Junior. Today, we're diving into what you need to do to plan an exit strategy from a place of preparation, not desperation. Most founders wait too long, and the best exits aren't reactive. They're reverse engineered. We'll walk you through the mindset, the planning, and the pitfalls you need to avoid if you want to build a company that leaves a legacy. Let's jump into segment 1, where we challenge the stigma around the word exit and explain why it's not about quitting, it's about being in control. And so, Ed, this question for me is almost like paradoxical. I want you to help us understand why this word exit has a stigma, if it does, in the entrepreneurial community.
There's a lot behind that. It really depends on what kind of business you're coming from, going into, working in, whatever it might be. If you're more of a legacy business and you're very well known in the community and people see and potentially work for you, they use your services, they experience your family, they've been around your business for a long time. Sometimes founders can think of it as giving up or quitting, when really it isn't that. It's making sure when you have the opportunity and striking when your iron's hot to get the chips off the table that you want to get off the table. Money makes money. So if you have an opportunity, it's better to take the opportunity when you have the chance to do it than it is to potentially screw up your legacy.
So I guess the idea, is it justified that when the entrepreneurial community uses the word or hears the word exit, they assume things that might not be true? Is it fair, just like a yes/no answer? Do you think it's fair or not fair that word for some reason has that stigma?
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair. I think the fact that a lot of people might only do this once, and there's a few of us that are lucky enough to do it multiple times because we enjoy doing it, but a lot of people only do it once, so they don't know what it's like until they do it. And you don't really hear a lot of people say, oh, I wish I never would have sold this, or wish I would have never done that. So I could imagine when you're looking at it from a founder's shoes, especially when you have put your blood, sweat, and tears into a business, having concern about the unknown, concern about what might happen, getting into an understanding that you rent your business, you don't own your business, making sure you are constantly planning on how you're going to transition to the next person. Maybe it's not a sale. Maybe it is moving it to your children. Maybe it's moving it to another family member. How do you view your exit strategy since your early days as you were a founder?
You know what is interesting is that, when we talk about, this idea of preparedness, I was definitely an early adopter of it, but I made some stupid, really sort of decisions around being prepared. And we're going to get into some of those, but I guess I thought that, an exit strategy would be something you figured out when the time came. But now I realize that it's something that you need to work toward every day. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, and one of the reasons why I'm in the process of finishing a book on this topic, among other things, is that I believe that this stuff could be reverse engineered. I mean, legitimately. Like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. But it did, in fairness, take me a while. So when I in my early days of Pepperjam, it wasn't something that was top of mind. But I love this idea or the word optionality. What it gives you is leverage and control. If you prepare starting right now, you'll be that much more prepared, that much more ready when the opportunity comes, for a whole range of things, and including an exit. In your case, how has your view of exit strategy changed since the early days as a founder?
To be 100% honest, there wasn't an exit strategy early. We never thought of that. We came into it really, we're going to own this forever. Very immature mindset. And then eventually you think about, well, wait, how did I end up with it? I ended up with it because my father and my uncle exited the business for me to come into it. So as we get more into it, more mature, you're growing it, you're thinking like, do I want to put my kids in the same position I was in? No. It was not a fun position.
So what's interesting is you're almost touching on this idea that maybe the word exit for your family it carried the stigma. You didn't seem to really buy into it. You kind of took the word exit as an empowering thing for you and your team. So yeah.
Yeah. And what we did with the word exit is, how do we transition this business? So now this is specifically on our energy business. How do we transition this business into the next generation? And the way we went about it is we focused on our team. We focused on our management team. It took a lot of times, a lot of chances, but we brought people in, we've removed people, we've kept some people. You're not going to get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. But exit to us is, how do we transition the business to the next generation comfortably and set them up for success? And that's really what we've worked on from the beginning. We didn't really do it too much till now. And once we got that motivation in place of how do we make this better for the next generation on this business specifically, we had a hard time getting that group in place, but we got it in place and making better decisions. How do you not let ego get in the way of making it the first?
So I actually, I'll share a story on this because it makes me sitting here as the one lecturing and educating a little bit vulnerable, but I'm just going to tell you the truth. It was early in Pepperjam. I had just graduated from law school 3 years prior to this. So it was about 2006. And I mentioned in a previous podcast that this European company came in by the name of Xanox, who was owned by Axel Springer. And they were really interested in creating a US presence at that time. And they thought Pepperjam had a great brand. We got to the point where we had an LOI, but, reflecting back on it now, my ego was through the roof. I thought I was invincible. I at that time, I truly didn't have, and this is for anyone listening, you have to develop an appreciation for the mechanics of valuation. Just because you think something's worth $1 gazillion doesn't make it worth that. It's really, when we think about it, sort of a buyer and a seller market. And the price is really set by the person willing to fork over the money or the equity, right? So anyway, 2006, Xanox, this is almost too amazing to share, at least the beginning of it. It was a term sheet that valued the company around $100 million. And just to remind everybody, I owned 85% of the company. I remember sitting in a meeting overlooking the World Trade Center, what was left at that point, in a building there in New York City. And one of the founders of Xanox joked with me. And again, I'm not bragging here. I'm saying I can't believe I remember this. It was crystal clear. And he said, "Are you going to buy a private island?" And I was like, holy sugar. Because my initial, it would have been spread out. And we're going to talk in future episodes about how deals are structured. But my payout up front was over $250,000. And then I would have had, all kinds of upside. So anyway, yeah, ego got in the way to the extent that I think we spent a little bit too much time negotiating price. But by the way, we came to an agreement on price. And what had happened was the buyer's parent company, Axel Springer, had a shift in strategy. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, our parents said they want us to acquire a company in Europe, particularly the United Kingdom.
So change your office address.
No, I changed my, no, but they actually did make that acquisition, to be fair. And what was, looking back on it, so I didn't kill the deal with my ego, but I'm just being honest that I didn't have an appreciation of valuation. And this episode is all about preparedness. So sometimes you learn the lesson the hard way and you never F up again. That's sort of what happened here. But let's move on to the next segment. So now that we've reframed the way we think about exits, let's look at how preparation actually plays out in deals. In our next segment, Deal of the Week, we'll compare two founders, one who planned years ahead and one who didn't. You know what the reality is? There's a big difference in the outcome. Okay, so Deal of the Week. Ed, this is where we take that idea of preparedness to the next level. We kind of peel back the onion on it. In this segment, we're going to focus on exit readiness, exit ready versus exit reacting, the emotional person that I know that you're going to describe for our listeners. And for those that are listening, this is a critical part. You either fall into one or the other. Once you realize the value of preparation, you're going to go all in. So you rarely see people who say, oh, this is a good idea, but never do it. It's either you're super emotional and not prepared, or you're doing everything you can to be prepared. So before you talk about exit reacting, what does it look like to be prepared? So I'm just going to rattle off a few things. And for the folks that are listening, if you say no to any of these, you're not ready yet. But that's okay. That's why we have our podcast. That's why I'm writing the book. There's a lot of information out there to get prepared. So the best exits don't happen when the founder feels ready. They happen when the business is ready. So the distinction there is not the mindset of the founder, but is the business ready? In fact, we'll deep dive on this idea of how that mindset of the founder somehow being ready, but the business not, really killing deals all the time. But so readiness is built through intentional, strategic work over time. So here are some of the items. Your books are clean. Your legal structure is sound. Your growth is consistent and explainable. Your operations are documented, critical. Your revenue is diversified. Your customer retention is strong, and your founder risk and your key person risk is low. That's what readiness looks like. And when the buyer shows up, you don't have to fake it. You're ready to walk into the deal with confidence. So share with us this owner that does it all. I think you referred to them the other day as that the owner that goes in, he changes the toilet paper, he's the marketing manager, he's making the pizza, etc. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the exit reactive owner is really the person who is the judge, jury, and trial. They're opening the doors. They're making all the decisions during the day. They're not leaving the business ever, whether it be for a week when they're on vacation, they're still on their phone, they're still grinding, or whether it be for a month, for a longer term vacation, whatever it may be, that's an exit reactive person. They're running their business through the day, going through the paces. Then all of a sudden, an opportunity comes up. And the opportunity might be, hey, here's somebody who wants what I built, or, hey, I can't take this anymore, get me the hell out of here. So whether the situation, if you're not ready for it, it's very hard for a founder to leave a business when they're the business. People are investing in businesses to keep making them money. And if you take the founder out of the business when they're so reliant on the founder, it puts the business at risk. And when you put the business at risk, lowers your sale price because now it's more risk to the buyer. So when you're exit reactive, it's kind of think of it think about it as having to move very quickly. You're not planning to move. You're not picking up movers. You're not picking a mover. You're not buying a house. All of a sudden, I got to move. So you're throwing stuff in boxes. You're trying to clean up the house.
You're very emotional.
You're very emotional, and you're making decisions quickly, and you're not making the best decisions. So going through this process of what we want to go through here in this segment is really pointing out all the reasons why you shouldn't be exit reactive, why you should be focused on your craft and really focused on the preparation. And I know when you were going through Pepperjam, you started with the end in mind, purposefully to cross the finish line selling Pepperjam. How did that help you?
So yeah, before I dive into that, I just want to let folks know, we use the Pepperjam story and some of your core stories on purpose because, at least in my case, it was my first time. So I made a lot of mistakes. There's lots of lessons learned. But like I said just previously in the previous segment, it was something that I had an interest in, right? Selling one day. So I was somewhat of an early adopter, not from day one, and I just shared the story about the ego. But to answer your question on my readiness, I think my preparation was everything. It was absolutely critical to the successful exit of Pepperjam to a publicly traded company. From the start-ish, I hired a controller. I required him to create and present monthly financials. I required us and my executive team to have meetings. I've referenced in previous episodes, and I'm sure I'll mention a lot, I'm really big into personal and professional development. When you were just sharing your point of view on the emotional person who just isn't ready for an exit, when I was in law school, I remember them saying my first year, look to your right, look to your left, 50% of the folks won't be here, and it won't be because you don't have the ability. People don't fail out of law school. They freak out of law school. And the same is true with entrepreneurship. And so, I know that, and I know how emotional it is. And so I spent a lot of my life, not only my career, but my life focused on personal and professional development. So I just wanted to mention that because that helped me prepare. Getting my mind straight, thinking big, all of that stuff was created. It wasn't like I was born with it. I aspired to it. And that's interesting, aspiration. I mentioned in a previous episode, I get to work with celebrities like Damon Wayans Jr. And it strikes me as just extraordinary. And I came up with this idea of what super high profile people do, is they inspire the aspirers. So in other words, when I was going through all that personal development training back during my Pepperjam days, I went to 14 live shows, like I mentioned. I was being inspired by the aspirer, who is Tony Robbins. And so I just think that that's a really important thing. But in terms of preparation, my mindset was tight because of all of the investment I made in personal and professional development. And obviously I had the other stuff not, perfected. It was my first go at it. But certainly it allowed me to be prepared. I didn't have to scramble. I was already ready. And that's why the deal ended up moving really fast. I mean, some of the deals that you and I are working on took a lot longer than the Pepperjam deal. Great asset, able buyer, seller, well prepared, deal gets done. And I'll remind you, that happened in 2009, just about a year or so after the subprime mortgage financial collapse. Yeah. So yeah, that's a really important part of all this. I know one of the things that you think is really important is this idea of trust. And what's one thing that sort of like instantly builds or destroys it during, we'll say, the due diligence process, since that's such a sensitive period of time?
Yeah. So the due diligence process is key because with our process that we run is we do teasers, initial intents, whatever it might be, to get people interested, to develop some FOMO, bid process, whatever it is, to get to the best numbers. Going through all of that and having the continuity in your documentation, in your potential seller interviews, if there's any team interviews, having the continuity to carry what you've initially said through the process and keep it accurate and correct is huge. The second they sniff out something that's inaccurate or something that might not line up, and I've been through it. It might be a misspeaking of a term or a number that you might have rounded down and they rounded up, whatever it is. As soon as they smell continuity issues, it gives them more reasons to look even deeper. And they're going to then question everything you give them. And it's not, oh, okay, yeah, we see this change here or we see this happened here. Is, well, why? Then all of a sudden it goes from, I don't want to say an easy due diligence period or a smooth due diligence period, but it goes into them being very questionable and concerned about the information they've got presented. And then it opens up a whole different level of trust. And now they're defensive on, is this right? How do we make this right? Because they're purchasing, and depending on who you're selling to, whether it is a strategic buyer, they have to report to somebody, whether it's the owner of their company or the board of their company or the bank that's financing it. So they're going to want to reduce their liability and reduce their exposure. So then once there's an issue with data or an issue with, like you said, keeping your books clean, if they see like a big catch-up period or some chunkiness in the financials, then they're going to want to be doing a Q of E to take the liability off of them purchasing it into the person that is either financing it or approving it or whatever it might be. And as soon as that happens, it's very hard to get back on track. And as soon as they start questioning the data, it's extremely hard to get back on track. And usually the transactions are happening between the founder and the buyer. And when the founder is the guy, is the one who is really making the decisions and transitioning the data over to him, having the correct support from your team is key. And when there's too much founder dependency within the business, it can really take your deal off the guardrails. And when they get off the guardrails, how do you think you can help those things get fixed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that founder dependency piece, you mentioned it in a previous podcast where you shared the story of when you did a deal, you're working directly with the founder. You admitted you probably should have done a little bit more due diligence on the dependency of him. It didn't derail the deal, but it should have, because you had a hornet's nest that you inherited where you didn't know this beforehand, but he was doing pretty much everything, and he implied to you that he had people doing it. So when he left, all the people were like, why isn't it getting done? So founder, it's actually one of the top 3 reasons that we see at Legacy Advisors that could derail a deal. It's another reason why, for those that are listening, you know, if you're this person that we're describing, the founder dependent company person, it's really important that you take the steps to remove that dependency. And I know, you know, we'll talk more about it in this episode or a future episode, but it's okay, I guess. You know, you're button oil, right? And that's fine. It's a legacy business. You took it over from many generations, and you know, one day you're going to sell it for over $1 billion. But the thing is like, if you currently are founder dependent, you could change. The keys are, you know, hiring really great people who could make decisions, and making sure that your processes and procedures are tightened up, which we're going to talk about a little later.
So segment 3, business fundamentals for a future exit. The key part of the future exit is what Kris said of, if you can, start with the end in mind. If you can't, start now. It's never too late to start planning for the end. You're never owning a business. You're always renting a business. There's always going to be a transition point. And whether the exit is exit through a sale, exit to retirement and a family member takes it over, majority exit, minority exit, whatever it is, it's an exit. And it's a check mark in your life of, hey, okay, I'm leaving this portion of my life and going on to the next one. The next one might be no business. But for most of the time, people like us, it's some type of business, whether it's a hot dog stand or going out and starting another.
Listen, I want to buy my, well, now everybody's going to do it, but I want to own an unlimited number of car washes. It just seems like one of those.
Change falls in the drains.
I know. It was like Breaking Bad or whatever. But no, I just think it's one of those things. But go ahead. You have business fundamentals.
No, so the fundamental portion about the business is create a plan as quick as you can. When we got into business, we didn't have a plan. We were defensive. We were literally just putting fires out every day. How to put fires out, whether it's with customers, employees, literally fires on trucks, whatever it might be. We were just putting fires out. We didn't have a plan. So we got to make a plan probably in the third or fourth year of business. And it took a while to get there, but we made a plan and we started to attack it and go after it. And when you develop that plan, what do you take to really help it strategize and plan your future of your business?
Well, business fundamentals. So what's interesting is that the name of this particular podcast, this episode, I should say, is to start with the end in mind. And I think for people that are listening and starting, hopefully subscribers and might know us, listen, yes, you can reverse engineer preparedness, but you also have to build an awesome company. That's required. A lot of the content that Ed and I are going to share is going to sound like, oh, I need to do A, B, C, D, E, F. Yes. But you have to build a great company that people get excited about. So to your point on businesses long-term, how do I build businesses? I absolutely think long-term. One way to dispel or to address the founder-dependency issue is to build a company that's going to outlive you. Then there's lots of ways to do that. And we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But some of the juice of building a great company is what we're going to cover in this particular segment. But it includes, building an amazing culture, doing what Tony Hsieh, God love him, because he's passed, the founder of Zappos, or actually the CEO of Zappos. He wasn't the founder. But Tony wrote a book called Delivering Happiness. And it's about creating products and services that make people happy. So it's about all of these things. It's about locking in your legacy. It's about, where my head is right now. We're here at the Accelerator in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. When I graduated from law school in the early 2000s, I moved back to this area, and holy sugar was I thinking big. I founded Pepperjam. I stood up in front of everybody and I said, hey, we're going to build a company that leverages the area's greatest assets, the 13, 14 colleges and universities that graduate these great students, but they're all moving away. That's called brain drain. The reason I'm sharing this right now as an answer to your question is that you have to be the example. You have to think big and create opportunities for people. The legacy is defined in your ability to do that.
And nobody's going to do it for you.
And it defies the stigma. You have to give people examples of how having a successful exit like we both have had creates philanthropists. It creates community-minded, social impact-minded type of people. But for you, like I said, I know culture is something that's really important, and particularly how you create it and then deploy it through your executive team down. So share a little bit more about your perspective on culture and how that could also impact growth and stuff like that.
Yeah, so culture is the invisible SOP. So invisible procedure you put in place. It's the guardrails on how decisions are made in your business, what business you bring on, how you do business, how you conduct yourself in business. And it starts with the founder, the person who, whether it's a founder of first generation business or somebody who's taking over a business that's multi-generational. It's a change in culture. And our culture has always been never say no. Figure out a way to get it done quickly, and treat people with respect and try to offer the best service possible. And with having those three things in mind, first off, customer calls us, we're doing it. We're figuring out a way to do it. We're going to figure out a way to make money off it. As long as it's within our space, obviously, we're not going to go sell ice cream or something like that. But
you sell barbecue, but go ahead for another show.
So yeah, so the culture piece is what radiates down through your team, and you want your culture to be carried by your supports, your executive team, whoever it might be, to make sure it gets down to the people actually doing the day-to-day work and getting the products delivered, because that will help them stay on tracks within the guardrail and just answer the questions without them having to come to you. Because, for example, if you have 150 employees out there, you can't answer all those phone calls every day. Now, when you're 2,000 employees, you definitely can't answer all those employees every day. But if you have a culture, a mindset ingrained in how you do it, they're going to use that in how they make their decisions going forward and how they choose what to do and what not to do when they're in situations. And it'll flow through to the P&L, and it'll create what you want to come out of it and create a business that eventually the culture will spread so much. You're not the culture provider. You were a culture starter. And if you go through an exit or if you go through transition, the culture is already there. You're gone now. You moved on. I mean, look at all the businesses that are huge names that people don't even realize are last names. Like Rolls-Royce, Harley-Davidson, all these different companies. Henry Rolls isn't making Rolls-Royces anymore. I mean, he's gone, but that culture's there. Harley-Davidson, they're not riding their motorcycles. They're gone, but the culture's there. And they've established a brand, a business, a name that can be transitioned to people that don't have the last name that started it. And that's what you want to achieve with your culture, a mainstay culture in a business. It's hands down the most important thing. And in the beginning, we weren't focused on culture. Our culture was passed to us of, you don't question what has to be done from a customer. You just bend over backwards from a service standpoint, all that stuff. And that's one thing we've kept going is you just want to take care of your customers. Customers are trying to give you $100 bills every day. You just have to figure out a way to take them, to keep the money from them, to have them keep giving away. Like you said, build a great business, a great revenue stream, a great product that keeps coming in that is all supported by culture. And then once you get the culture in place, you got to fill those seats. It's putting the right butts in the right seats. And recruiting top talent is super hard. And I do it with drivers. But how do you recruit your top talent in marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's such a difficult question because of the time we are in, where, we're sort of moving a little bit out of what was a remote or a hybrid workplace back into a in-person workplace. But that complicates this idea of how do you recruit, top labor. Pay is going to be the number one thing. But I actually think a pretty close second, third, and fourth are culture. So you were just talking about that. And it was interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking, and I thought, one of the things that is synonymous almost is brand and culture. When I was thinking it, you said brand. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm right, that it's almost synonymous. So you need a great culture. You need a great brand, a great product. You need to make people happy. You need to serve people. All of these things will create demand for you around, recruiting top talent. I think that another area is flexibility. If you really look at that issue of in-office versus remote work, what I think if there's anything that we learn from that is that we all appreciate greater flexibility. We have busy lives. Depending on your age, you're either in college and you're starting your first business, or you're post-college trying to make your first, million or whatever. And then you start building your family, and then you buy your first home and all this jazz. And so, you have to create some flexibility for what is just reality. And so as we go back into sort of, a hybrid is really where most of my businesses are, where we let people work from home a few days a week, and then they come into the office a few days a week. But as that evolves, I think even if we come back in office, I hope that entrepreneurs, employers keep in mind the importance of flexibility. So, all right. And I would love that segment needs to come back as its own episode later on, because I think culture is so fun to talk about, and it's so worth investing in. One other quick thing before I transition into the next segment is when I think about brand, I don't know why, I think about energy. How does it make you feel? If you've crushed it like a Steve Jobs level consumer product, where you get excited about the package coming, you open it up like it's a little bit intimate. Like it's what?
It's trendy.
Yeah, you're doing what everybody wants, and they build a little FOMO in there. It's like you get to order your phone, then you got to wait kind of thing. But again, brand and energy. And so when we're talking about business fundamentals, I think, can you build a great company people get excited about? Can you deliver products and services that people love? These are all, call them prerequisites to you being prepared as a founder when that opportunity comes to sell. The better your culture, the enthusiasm around your talent, et cetera, the quality of your product and how you deliver it to the end user, all stack up into increasing the likelihood of a successful exit. All right, so we've talked about how smart founders build intentionally from day one. They focus on preparedness. And we've also kind of explored what happens if you don't. But in either case, prepared or not prepared, it is an emotional high, and potentially, it always seems like it really tests your emotions. So in segment 4, Founder Files, we're going to talk about the missed exit and how that entrepreneur paid the price.
Yeah, so the missed exit is huge with, like as Kris said, sometimes the best exits aren't when you want to sell. So if you're always prepared for an exit, you can always take advantage of potentially a suitor coming after you and being able to take advantage of that and say, okay, well, guess what? All my stuff's ready. All of my culture has been built and ingrained in the business. All of our procedures are together, and I can be in a place for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time without my business bothering me. And it still continues to go forward, still continues to grow, and still runs. That's when you're in a place that you're ready for an exit. Now, when you're in a place when you're not ready for an exit with a missed exit, you potentially are sitting there, you're in it every day, you're over and over again running the show, then all of a sudden an opportunity comes up and you're not ready for it. And when you're not ready for it, first of all, it's like you're getting into a roller coaster, strapping yourself in, and you get all excited, even though you're not ready to exit. And you might be ready to exit, but your business isn't ready for you to exit. And you're going to go up, you're going to be meeting with people, they're going to be talking to you, and then all of a sudden you're going to fall apart. So how is missing the exit process and going through an exit process a roller coaster from your point of view?
First, regardless of whether or not you're ready or not, accept it will be emotional, as you put, as a roller coaster. Just in the last 12 hours, I was on the phone with someone that we represent, and we're right at the end. The deal could get signed soon, right? And, it was a fairly emotional call. We know that there's a great likelihood of it happening, but we still our side and the seller still are feeling like nauseated over it. And so, back to my personal development study and focus throughout my life, there's a lot of visualization that you could do. My son Jackson, who's 13 years old, out of nowhere, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, said, Daddy, he said, when you're positive and you focus on positive things, it seems like a lot of positive things happen. But when all you could focus on is he didn't say this part, but he basically said, when you're not positive, it doesn't seem like things go right. Or if something happens that you didn't want, Daddy, and you overreact to it. And so right at the end there, either during due diligence or when you're coming out of it and you're about to sign the purchase agreement, is this very volatile time of highs and lows. And so let's take Jackson's advice. Stay positive, not so much that you're naive, but keep your emotions in check. Who was I talking to? I was just talking to someone. I was actually talking about talking to our videographer who's shooting this podcast, and he had recently lost a dog. And I was just sharing my condolences, and I said, "How's it been?" And he said, for me, just getting back to work and staying busy. And even like the day of the passing, he said he spent some time at the vet and stuff like that. Just staying busy is helpful. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the final throes of an acquisition and you're obsessing about it and you're an emotional wreck, go do something else. Yep. Leave the house, take a hike, go on a boat, sit by water. So there are all of these various ways of thinking about it. How does losing one deal affect a founder's long-term mindset?
A ton. So business has made you so durable. You've gotten from when you came into business, founded the business, whatever it is, and now you've came to a place that you have this mindset. You're durable. You can take punches of business. You're taking the hits that you're used to taking in business. So when you first start getting punched in business, it hurts a lot. Next time you get punched, doesn't hurt as much. Next time you get punched, doesn't hurt as much. Eventually you get to a place where you're like, man, I could handle anything. I could solve any problem ever. So now you're on a high. You're rolling. And then you want to flip the script with, now I want to sell my business. Whole different set of punches, whole different set of emotions. And it's like starting from scratch. So you built all this durability in business, and now you're going to build all this durability going through an acquisition. And then if it doesn't work out, it hurts because it's like, maybe people don't like my business. Should I like my business? Should I be doing something else? Now you're going to start questioning yourself. And it's focusing on the process and saying, oh, well, they missed out. They missed out on a great opportunity. I'm still here. I still get to run it. Live to see another day type.
And what did I learn?
And what did you learn through it? And as much of learning through it, obviously the fundamentals of what you learn through is, well, wait, okay, next time I'm going to have this stuff cleaner. I'm going to have a better team around me. I'm going to have this. Maybe it's a different person to advise on the deal. Maybe it's a different person to negotiate the deal. Maybe it's not a deal to a third party. Maybe it's a deal to your employees. Maybe you're going to take the ESOP opportunity or the MBO opportunity instead of going outside of your organization. And it really helps you build your durability in it, because the lucky ones, it happens first time. But as your son said, you're lucky when you think about being lucky. And the people that say they're never lucky, they don't realize how lucky they are.
Yeah.
They're still here to do it. If you're not lucky, you ain't here. I mean, you're lucky every day to be here. So the piece that is really near and dear to me is create the durability, create the separation of church and state, because you have two different jobs as a founder, especially if you're going through an exit. You have the job of doing what you do every day, whether it's overseeing your staff, overseeing your executive team, overseeing a leadership group, Then you have the other job of, okay, now I have to get my way through an exit, and really continuing to develop that durability. The quicker you develop it, the quicker you understand that you're going to have to be durability through the process, the easier the process is going to be. And like you said, sometimes you just got to check out. Go take a walk, go take a cold shower, go take something. I mean, snap out of it and focus on what you need to get done. Trust the process and try not to be emotional. Cause when you're emotional, you can make mistakes. And what emotional mistakes have you seen that have really hurt the founders when they're thinking about selling?
I think it's a great question. And I think that overvaluing the business based on emotion and not market facts. As I referenced the Xanax deal, that wasn't the reason the deal didn't happen. It was strategic, but I'm sure that didn't help. I do remember it making the process a little bit longer. The other is trying to time the market. I think that it's an awful decision. Focus on being prepared. Don't try to time the market. When you're ready to go to market, and we've talked about this and we'll talk about it in future episodes, we have a whole playbook. The book that I'm writing is on this particular topic of preparedness. But when the time comes, you're going to be ready. So don't, try to time it. The other is, just a founder I've said this, in previous interviews I've done and stuff. I think one of the biggest, one of the wrong ways to run a business is to fall in love with your idea. It's really not about that. It's about the end user. It's about how your product makes people feel, whether do they like your product? Does it solve a problem? Does it make them happy? All of these things. And I feel like if I had, $1 million for every founder over the years that reached out to me about how they could protect their idea, I would be a billionaire. And so it's one of those things. These are emotional things too, by the way. These aren't level-headed, strategic type of thinking. This is emotional thinking. This is ego-driven thinking. And the best founders make peace with the idea that exiting isn't quitting. It's evolving, like you said earlier. And so, listen, if you've ever thought, I'm still growing, why should I exit now? This segment, the next segment called The Deal Doctor, is for you. We're going to break down why planning today protects your valuation and your freedom later on. A number of people who've been listening to this podcast so far are thinking, this is the furthest thing from my mind. I'm focused on growing the business. That's what my job is. My job isn't to plan so that one day when we sell, we're prepared. I actually very much disagree with that mindset, but I know a lot of people share that mindset. So for those of you that are asking, why is Kris and Ed going to dive into yet another segment to try to convince me about preparing now? Let me tell you what preparation does. Number one, planning equals leverage, even without immediate selling plans. It helps you raise money. It helps you survive downturns in your market. It helps you build a great culture and recruit the best people. Well-run, efficient companies are the kind of companies that attract the talent, become great, and attract buyers at high valuations. It's all about optionality as well. I just can't, I love it. It's one of those things where if you could almost cheat, where you don't even have to work as hard as others. You just need to prepare better. You need to take action while they're thinking about it. The other thing I love about, the Deal Doctor segment is the idea around financial literacy. This is a good thing. The stuff that we're talking about in terms of preparedness are the types of things that make you a better manager, a better executive, a better founder. You just have one of the things is that you learn how to be disciplined. And there's a whole slew of benefits around that. So what are your thoughts, Ed?
So knowing your business is key, and having literacy around how your balance sheets work, how your financial statements work, how your cash flow statement works, how your cash flow flows, how much cash it takes to run your business. The more you know about your business, the better you're going to be at going through this process. And that all starts from the beginning of how you structure, not necessarily the beginning, but how you start to report and plan when you start to grow into a mature business. The piece of having the leverage is when you know more about your business and you know your whole business in and out, it's second nature to you. And again, that builds continuity in the information, builds continuity in the conversation. And the buyers sit there and say, man, this guy really knows his business. So what they're feeling is this business has been ran by somebody who really knows their business. And when you get to those negotiation points, it's a lot easier to talk about why you did that, who did this, or why did they do this. And it's not like you need to know where this information comes from or how. You just need to know the information. And most of the time when you're going through an exit or a sale, you're going to be going to a strategic, somebody in your business that is acquiring your business to get larger, to take a level up, or a financial buyer. The strategic buyer knows your industry as well as you do, sometimes better, and they're going to have to learn your business very quickly. So they're going to know what you should know, and they're going to ask you questions if they don't know them. And so you're basically auditioning. And then the financial buyer is your private equity type of person, private equity type of group, family office, and you want to talk about people that might not know what you're doing, but they're really interested in your business or your industry. They want to get into it. They're going to deep dive like no tomorrow. So it's nothing against yourself or you. They're just looking to find every answer, to get every question answered, and to really learn the business as quick as they can. And when you're going through that piece, what advice do you give the founders to really start protecting their future valuation?
So I think, it's important to consider the fact that at the end of the day, the prerequisites, which we already talked about, people love your product, love your service. You have a culture that attracts the best talent. You've built something that other people want to write stories about. Other people want to model.
They want to write a check to it too.
They want to write a check to it. You have all those things, but guess what? That's not what you're going to get valued on. At the end of the day, it's highly mathematical and highly mechanical. The thing you may have, your valuation is. And so the thing that you may have to your advantage is an awesome company is going to fetch a much higher multiple. And for those that are listening, multiples are basically the multiplier that's used against most commonly EBITDA to come up with your valuation.
So what advice would you give a founder today to start protecting their future valuation?
So, we talked a lot about sort of the assumed, the intangibles, the fact that, you got to build a great business with a great culture that attracts incredible talent. You need to build products and services that people love, right? Those are all prerequisites to eventually getting the opportunity to sell for, life-changing value. But at the end of the day, that valuation, unfortunately, is very mathematical. It's very mechanical. It's set as a multiplier to, your EBITDA, your financials. Ultimately, in most cases, it's going to be your profits, right? And so it's highly mechanical. Now, having an awesome company, particularly that does something unique, that solves a problem that few or no one else is solving, could drive up that multiple big time. So this is the advice I would give to a founder. In fact, I've said, having invested in a lot of young entrepreneurs, first, select an industry that is big such that investors and acquirers care.
Yep.
Again, don't fall too much in love with your idea. I love to reverse engineer things and be what Malcolm Gladwell referred to as operationally sound and operationally risk averse. So in other words, I like to be highly strategic before I start a business, that this business is in an industry that's big, that we could build and scale it into something that's super valuable. But if you've already made the decision, most people who are listening to this podcast already have businesses. So the way you maximize it is really to maximize your financials. Maximize, how much
profit.
Yeah. Maximize your ability to generate growth, and profits. And so, in your instance, how can exit planning create personal freedom for a founder, even if they keep the business?
Yeah. So even though you're not leaving and getting that big check, might not be a big check, maybe a small check, maybe it's just a relief, whatever it might be, you're planning to not be there. So you're setting the business up to run without you. And again, this goes back to the founder-dependency issue we addressed a few segments ago. You can just have a business. You don't have to leave. You can just have a business that throws off X number of cash a month. If it's running without you, and I would recommend some other financial things if you're that far removed, whether it be an audited financial statement by a third-party accounting firm, or having a very, very trusted CEO running the business, or along with that, having frequent board meetings with your leadership team and yourself, to where you're coming in once a month as an ownership group, whatever it is. But when you're at that level and you've planned and you've executed so well, you can exit the business without exiting the business. You could just sit there and be an equity owner of a business that you have nothing to do with. It's kind of like when you hear larger businesses with family members that are just getting distribution checks monthly or quarterly, whatever it is. And that's in a sense what it is. They're just getting a check because they own a business. They're not doing anything for it, just their name's on the door. Mm-hmm. So if you're planning your business to run without you, in a sense, you're planning your business to be sold. And it's a mature business. It has all of its tentacles out and it's operating. And it's not that business that the founder is in every day. So you can continue to enjoy the income from the business and exit the business without ever selling the business. So there's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of options out there. It's just how you want to go about it. It's finding the solution that works best for you, first and foremost, works best for your family, and works best for your business. And what advice would you give to a founder when they're thinking about, are they exit ready?
That's so great. It's a good question, probably a good final question for this podcast. I think that it's all about preparedness, and the word that we both used too little in this whole podcast is the word discipline. It was interesting to listen to you talk about this idea of staying with the company, and just building a great company and either taking distributions or whatever. That's one of the benefits of preparedness, is that you run a more efficient company. And the reason why I like the word discipline, and you know what, there is there's a bit of a taboo to the word discipline, because sometimes people think that they could get there by working harder or running faster. But I don't purport to be the fastest or whatever. I get there tactically by being disciplined. The 1% rule, just 1% every single day. could change your life, right? And so, yeah, my advice would be to really hold close your responsibility as an entrepreneur to maintain the highest level of discipline and preparedness possible in order to not only, to your point, build a great company that could make you very, very wealthy and could have a tremendous impact on society and the employees that you serve. But it's something that you're proud of. It's something that defines your legacy. And that's what today's podcast was all about. So that is a wrap on episode 4, Begin with the End in Mind. And if there's anything that folks take from today, it's this. Great exits are reverse engineered. They don't just happen, they're designed.
Yep. Prepare early, build intentionally, protect your future. Your business and your legacy depend on it.
So in closing, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Legacy Advisors podcast. I mean, heck, after the first episode, we had over 200 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. But if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button. And you could listen to us on any of the major podcast platforms. While you're there, sounds a little bit, over the top, but please leave us a review, your choice on what you say, but they're valuable as we try to build up our platform to help as many entrepreneurs as possible achieve their legacies. And next week, we're going to discuss one of the most popular pieces of content that I've ever put together in my life. It's my 20-point M&A checklist. I've given this presentation around the world to top entrepreneurs and executives. And next week, we share it with you exclusively to our subscribers. So you'll want to make absolutely certain we see you next week on the Legacy Advisors podcast. Thanks for listening.